guys in the dark.
So I'd walked into the room for the first time freshman year and saw him standing in the middle of the room screaming at his dad. He was yelling about not wanting to go and how he blamed his mom for writing his college essay, about filing the application. He kept calling my roommate, and I'll just name him Eduardo, as ungrateful and a piece of shit, threatening to beat the shit out of him if he even tried to leave. It was right after he finished speaking that they realized I was in the room. They both had pretended nothing had happened, shook my hand, and introduced themselves. Luckily, my parents had not walked in with me, so they didn't have to see what I had to see. Yes, eventually my parents had met his, as they helped me set up the room, and talked about how proud of us they were. His dad kept saying things like, "It's either college or the streets, because I'm not paying to support a failure." My parents, of course, thought that he was just joking. Every day this kid told me how he just hated school. He would never go to class. He would drink in the room all day with the door wide open. We were on a dry campus, by the way. He would scream at everyone, party all night, and just be a dick. He used to watch VH1 every night until about 4 a.m., with the volume cranked up so loud that you couldn't hear yourself. When I asked him to turn it down because I couldn't hear, he said he would if I wrestled him. Turns out he was really serious about this. He wanted to wrestle me. Because of me asking him to turn down that Bret Michaels Rock of Love show, I declined, and I just went to bed. The next day he called his mom to come get him, and she agreed, said that she was getting in the car. She never came. He lost his shit. He broke everything that he owned, punched a hole through his TV, slammed his Guitar Hero controller on the ground repeatedly, threw his Xbox right out the window, cracked his cell phone in half, ripped his bed sheets. He basically totaled his side of the room. I left the room during all of this, assuming that he was just blowing off some steam and not knowing he was breaking his shit. I had walked back into a war zone, with him standing in the middle of the room, just crying, drinking laundry detergent, yelling about how he just wanted to die, how he took a whole bottle of Advil after he broke his stuff. I ran to go get the RA. He ran and took the broken glass and plastic shards from his computer monitor, started cutting his wrists. The RA and I entered the room to this kid throwing up detergent and bleeding all over the place. Cops were called. They fed him charcoal to prevent him from dying due to the detergent and the pills. Apparently they do this instead of the Ipecac syrup. He left that night, woke me up to say goodbye. The last thing he said to me was, "Goodbye. I'm sorry about ruining your birthday." After he left, I needed a new roommate. The guys across the hall were triple in the room, made for two, so I had invited one of them to come live with me. He had accepted. They already agreed, and less than 2 weeks later, he was all moved in with me. This new guy is great. We really hit it off, became fast friends. He begins to tell me about how Eduardo still texts him. Apparently he still texted everyone in the rooms near me. Now I really don't care. Because, well, who am I to say who they should and shouldn't talk to, as long as it really doesn't involve me? My new roommate, who I'll call Bill, is a pretty social guy, and has long since made friends with all of the neighbors. I always wanted to make friends with the people around us, but having Eduardo as a roommate made it incredibly difficult to do so. His train of thought was, if they were his friends, under no circumstances would they be my friend as well. Honestly, looking back at it, I guess I was a bit like an abused girlfriend, or a wife. I'd gotten so used to him being a dick that I just quietly sat in my room playing video games, afraid to even be sociable for fear of awakening the beast. Anyways, Bill introduced me to all the neighbors. We all became really good friends. And it was once this friendship had blossomed that they began to admit to me that not only was Eduardo still texting them, he was becoming more and more angry towards me. He would text them about things, and how he would be better if I had left and not him, and how he just made some mistakes and wished that he would come back. It was at this point that he texted Bill and told him, "Hey man, I'm going to come visit for the weekend. I'm taking my old bed while I'm there." It was at this point that I actually nutted up and decided enough was enough. I called him up myself. I still had his number saved in my phone for God knows what reason. flat out told him that he was unwelcomed in my room. I said that he was welcome to come get his stuff that he had left, that had survived his episode, which was his mini fridge. It was really all that remained, but there was no way that I was letting him stay in the room for longer than it took to take his fridge, because of the fact that he was downright a horrible person. He flipped out on me. He started screaming into the phone how I was the greasiest piece of shit slime ball that he had ever called a friend. I said sorry, but goodbye, and I hung up on him. He tried calling me back, texting, and IMing me, but I just ignored him, or I even blocked him. It was at this point that he started commenting on everything that I've ever done on Facebook. I mean ever. All with the same word. He called me the F word. Hundreds of notifications. Finally he stopped. I thought that it was over. Then suddenly Bill gets a text that says, "Dude, fuck him. He won't say no after this." Bill asks him what he means, and he responds with, "Got my dad's gun case keys. See you in an hour, dude." I've never run anywhere faster than I have to the police station that very day. I explained the situation. They called the cops from his area to speak with him and his parents. They assured me that nothing was going to happen, and that he probably was just pissed off and needed to blow off some steam. Turns out the cops got to his house as he was getting in the car. He had his dad's shotgun under the passenger seat. I called my family. They drove out. We had a meeting with the police. His mother drove out to the school too and met with us. She pleaded that her son needed help, and that if I had him arrested, he could never change. My parents kept urging me to press charges on him, but the look in his mom's eyes was so sad that I told her I wouldn't if he ended up getting the help that he needed. And once again, everything was fine for about a week. Halloween night rolls around. Due to my job on campus, I can't go out partying. My job consists of sitting at a desk, checking ID cards between 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. to make sure everyone who enters actually lives in the building. Well, I was informed that joining me and my work partner would be 2 troopers. They told me that it was because the drunken shenanigans on Halloween tend to get more rowdy than 2 minimum wage student workers can really handle. I thought that was pretty badass. I spent the whole night checking the IDs of kids dressed up in costumes, trashed out of their skulls. Right around 3 a.m., one officer pulls me aside, says that he has to tell me something. The real reason that they were there that night was because that Eduardo was seen in the area. They needed to make sure that I was safe while they found him. Apparently kids are harder to identify when they're all costumed up. The officer told me that they found him on campus around 2 a.m., hiding in the service entrance of my dorm building. He was carrying a knife. This time I wasn't so lenient on him. I pressed charges. Among other things, he is now not allowed within 2 miles of campus, which essentially makes him unable to be in the town the school is located in. It's been about 4 years now, and I still remember every detail vividly. My orientation for summer semester roommate was an anime or mild video game nerd. She played WoW, but that was about it. She told me from day one that she wasn't too big on drama or fake hanging out group time, and she liked to just veg about. Cool, I thought. We're gonna get along just great. Since our program had us placed with identical schedules, studying was going to be a breeze. The program was about 5 weeks long. The first week went on great. We hung out, shared notes, we even studied together. We cracked geeky jokes, commented on the vanity of some of our classmates. We even watched bad ghost hunting TV shows. All was pretty well. But after a week and a half, I began to realize that our personalities were a little too well matched. You see, my roommate never left the room, ever. We went out to dinner one night and lingered for half an hour, about every few days, to go get coffee on campus. But beyond that, she was pretty much a potted plant in the dorm room. No amount of coaxing or invitation from myself or our friends ever got her to go out. After a little while, I began to feel the frustration of pent-up sexual energy. She was a light sleeper, and even stealthy masturbation was usually enough to wake her up. I tried in the shower, but being a not-so-crafty female, that usually didn't lead to too much success. And doing it in the dorm showers was not exactly my idea of a private setting. My only hope was to get this girl out of the room for any amount of time, but it was as if the girl was a sadist Showers, 5 minutes. Like lightning. Bathroom trips, usually 3 minutes. Food, only went when I went. Otherwise, she ate from the boxes of food that she brought with her. Studying sessions, again, only went out when I did. Otherwise, she studied alone, or with me in my room. Finally, a friend and I had plotted a master conspiracy to get her out. He was going to drag her to sushi for dinner, even if it involved her kicking and screaming, and I was going to pretend to have to study with one of my friends in the room. She didn't like this person. Everything was set until the morning of the day that we had planned to get her out. In one of our classes, we watched a video on sexual assault and sociology. Our teacher made it very clear to us, in an utmost uncomfortable way, mind you, that students who were bothered by the content of the video were free to walk out to take a minute, and that there were on-campus support groups. Sure enough, during a 5-minute mid-class break, it was about a 3-hour class, by the way, she turns to my friend and I and admits that she almost started crying. Then she suddenly comments to me that she wonders if there are any support groups on campus, and then she gets up so quietly and speaks with our professor. In other words, she just informed me, all explicitly, that she was a sexual assault victim. This whole time I thought that my roommate was a sadist and didn't understand blatant hints about needing personal time. It turns out that I was with a sexual assault victim who was terrified of being around people that she didn't intimately trust. Needless to say, I wound up going the entire semester without a single successful slick, and my morality guilt tripped me the entire time about being bitter to her about it. I just recently got a new roommate. This entire situation should have never happened, but I needed someone to help with the rent. So a Craigslist posting later, he had moved in. His name was Greg, and he discloses to me that he did have some strange sleeping behaviors, like sleep talking, walking, night terrors, that kind of stuff. Funny thing was, I also have a history of sleepwalking, but only on rare occasions. The first incident occurred about 1 week later, when I heard him screaming in the middle of the night. Since we both slept in separate rooms on different sides of the house, the screams sounded pretty distant, but enough to scare me so much that I ran to go check on him. As I'd get closer to his bedroom, he would stop screaming, so I just went back to bed. For the next month, he had no issues. I noticed that he had no friends or family that would come and visit. I never saw him or heard him on the phone, or even saw him texting. Then another random night, Greg started screaming again. Same thing. Got up and started to go to his room, but then suddenly he would stop. Then one night I was awoken by screaming in my bedroom. I couldn't see anything in the panic, so I turned on the bedroom lamp, and he was at the foot of my bed wearing some sleeping clothes. I think they were athletic shorts and a t-shirt. It scared me, so I started screaming and woke him up. He apologized and then went back to his bed. Then the scariest thing happened. About 2 nights later, I woke up to clanking. Sounded like tools and hammers tapping together. I turned on the light to see Greg kneeling down in a corner, working on something with his hands. A few seconds after turning on that light, Greg froze, then slowly turned his upper body towards me and stared blankly at me while I laid there in bed. I was beyond creeped out at this point, so I slowly slid out of bed and left the house. After sleeping in my truck down the road in an empty church parking lot, I decided to go back to the house at about 8 o'clock in the morning. Greg was gone. All of his belongings were gone. There was no signs of him anywhere in that house. It was like he had never lived there at all. I didn't know of any of his friends or family, so I had no one to call about him and check on him. Days had turned into weeks. Weeks had turned into months. When I moved out after the lease was up, I was moving furniture out of my bedroom. In the corner of my room where I had last saw Greg kneeling down, I realized the floor vent for the air conditioning was loose. Inside the floor vent was an envelope with a ton of pictures of me sleeping. The pictures had handwritten dates and times written on the back of the pictures. The only other item was a whittled down wooden broom handle brought to a point. I truly believe Greg was trying to prepare to kill me that night, and then he realized it. because it was the sleepwalking Greg that was going to do it. He left to save my life. It appears that he had been coming to my room almost every single night, working on making the broom handle into a stabbing weapon, and I never heard it, until the very last night when I happened to see him.
If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.